Jimmy, somebody held a gun to your head and said, why has Tennessee struggled so much against Florida in times, especially that I thought Tennessee had as good or a better team? I don't believe Tennessee's been more talented as many times as a lot of fans do. But why do you think that has been such an issue for the Vols, even in times which they had really good teams?
That's hard to explain. I think that during the Steve Spurrier years, he gave that team a confidence that they would beat Florida, and for whatever reason, it's carried over for the last 20 years. I'll just look this up. Florida has beaten Tennessee when they've had coaches on the hot seat, when they've had coaches fired after the season, when they backup quarterbacks have beat them. Florida's beat them when they're unranked. Florida went 5-7 last year and beat Tennessee, played probably their best game of the year against Tennessee. They got stomped by Utah before that. Here's the other one, too. 4 quarterbacks had beaten Tennessee that weren't good enough to keep their job at Florida and transferred. 4 of them. Like Jacoby Brissett and Tyler Murphy and then Driscoll. There's another one that's escaping me. But, I mean, I'm thinking about that, and really? These guys aren't good enough to maintain their starting job at Florida, and they just beat Tennessee? There's some kind of deal, some kind of hex going on with this one. It's almost like the way Tennessee never loses to Kentucky, except Kentucky's not as good as Tennessee is against Florida, talent-wise.
I agree. When I looked it up, it still stuns me. It's 17 of the last 19 that Florida has won, and it is 7 of the last 8 as well. Caleb, do you have any idea as to why this game is so vexing, to use Jimmy's term?
I have an idea and I have a theory, and it does go back to the 90s. So I think we can safely say while Fulmer recruit was a better recruiter than Spurrier didn't have to recruit as much because he's in the state of Florida. So they were comparable. Can we at least safely say they were comparable talent-wise during that time?
I think so.
Yes.
And, okay, I think because the game was so early in the season during that time, and Spurrier was a genius X's and O's game planner, I think X's and O's game plan gurus always have advantages when highly talented teams meet early in the season because you don't have a lot to go off of on film. So I think Spurrier could throw a lot of things at Tennessee that they hadn't seen before. I think over time, and then I think the Urban Meyer years, I think the fact of the matter is Tennessee was just falling apart as a program, and our Urban Meyer in Florida was just better. So that explains up to 2010. I think by the time 2010 and 2011 came, the culture in Knoxville of Tennessee is just cursed against Florida, and Tennessee always getting nervous about playing Florida. I think the vibe of the fan base, I think that's a permanent fixture vibe among the fan base and students at Tennessee. And I do think it infects the players as they go play Florida that week, to the point to where they get really tight, the palms get really sweaty. I think they hear the chatter on campus during the week. And so I think the minute something goes wrong against Florida, they think, oh no, we're about to do it again. I think that's exactly what happened last year. They took a 7-0 lead. Kamal Haddon missed a tackle on a Florida 80-yard run, and I think panic set in. I think that's what happens.
Here's another that's hard to explain. Hadn't Florida beaten Tennessee on like 2 63-yard touchdown passes late in the game?
Yeah, but Butch Jones was coaching.
And Bob Shoop was the defensive coordinator for one of those.
Yeah, but Butch Jones decided they were short on defensive backs, and Butch Jones decided, well, we just won't have a dime package. Rather than say, let's just put a receiver in there on the final Hail Mary play of the game, he comes out and says, guys, we don't have a dime package. We're short on defensive backs.
Stupid.
No.
But it's amazing that Florida's been able to hit those plays on them. But I do think Florida's gotten in their head, and I agree with a lot of what Caleb said about that. I think that some opponent, and there's a history of a lot of this going on at different places. Of course, we focus on it because it's Tennessee, Florida. But I think Florida's gotten into Tennessee's head, and even though it's new players and new coaches, I think there's an aura that permeates it that's carried on, and that's affected Tennessee's play. Tennessee usually plays one of its 2 or 3 worst games of the year against Florida. And Florida usually plays one of his 2 or 3 best games against Tennessee. Usually.
Let's not forget this too, Jimmy, that Tennessee seemed to be in control in 2022. Yet that game came down to a missed Hail Mary, and then suddenly you're looking at that many more losses. You would be looking at 8 in a row, I think. I mean, that is wow. That game should have never even been close.
No, as I remember, Florida scored late, got the onside kick, and that put them in position, and that was around midfield, put them in position to be able to try to throw a Hail Mary. I think Anthony Richard got hit when he threw it and he got intercepted, as I recall, at the end of that game.
Okay, let me ask you both this. Is Tennessee better off with low expectations because of what happened at Arkansas last week, as opposed to high expectations that we've seen unfulfilled previously? The show represented by Banks and Jones. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Jimmy, does Tennessee have a mental advantage since they lost and expectations are low heading into this game?
I don't think so. And ask Vegas about expectations. Last I looked, Tennessee was favored by 15.5. So I don't think there's an advantage to that. I do think, see, here's what happens after a loss. You either get fired up, you come back and you play really well, or it's shaking your confidence. So where's this team going to go? I can't imagine Tennessee's offensive tackles having confidence. I can't imagine Tennessee's offense being confident right now, other than Dylan Sampson. Defensively, I thought they played well. I wondered if they just got tired on that last drive against Arkansas. I'm not sure. They ended up having to play a whole lot of snaps and possessions there in the second half. Even though they rotate a lot, I wondered about that. But to your point, Dave, I don't think that the, quote, low expectations are in Tennessee's favor.
I would add a third to what you said. Either you come out and play hard, or you're frustrated and your confidence is low, or the third is you're just not very good. I think that's a real possibility given the holes at offensive tackle.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll jump in, but I agree. But Florida's not very good either. So then we get to the whole, particularly on defense, they're not very good. So then we get to the Jimmy point of watch this be the game where their defensive line decides to get like 7 sacks.
Well, here's the thing too that concerns me about Florida. And I don't think Florida's that good, okay, granted. But they have won 2 in a row. And as a team, they complete 72% of their passes. They've had back-to-back games where they went 23 of 28 with a 2-quarterback system and 26 of 28. They complete a lot of passes. And this is the best passing team that Tennessee will have faced. So how do they deal with that? How does the secondary deal with that? How does the defensive line deal with putting pressure on both quarterbacks, Mertz and Legway? So I think that's going to be interesting to see how Tennessee's defense responds against a very accurate passing team.
All right, Jim, I know it's fairly early in the week still, but you and I both have to have our predictions ready for the show that airs on Saturday. So I imagine you've got your prediction in your back pocket. I'm curious if you would be interested in sharing that with us now.
I'll just say that I've got it as a low-scoring game, and I've got Tennessee winning. I don't have Tennessee coming close to covering the 15.5. I think it'll be a touchdown or less.
Follow up, should Tennessee fans be happy with that? I say heck yes.
Yeah, any win against Florida, you should be happy. Doesn't mean you got to storm the field and tear down the goalpost, but you should be happy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of
such a bizarre series, and I know we're a part of it, so maybe we see it more than most, but it just feels like Yes, the Spurrier thing, even though some of these players on the team weren't even alive when he was coaching at Florida, it does seem to still have an effect.